Hi everyone, and welcome to the next part of the series of audio tutorials about Eurofly 3. Today we are finally going to start talking about the actual flying, things that are concerned with the properties and features of the various airplanes, about their aerodynamics, and thus we're also going to delve a little bit into the rules that govern the behavior of Eurofly pilots, and simply put, into how everything in Eurofly 3 works. The fleet of Eurofly 3 is divided into 3 categories, starting with Category 1, which are the smallest airplanes, continuing with Category 2 being the mid-sized airplanes, all the way to Category 3, which are the largest ones. All the airplanes, as I said, have different properties, different onboard systems, different aerodynamics, but it doesn't work in such a way that as soon as you first start Eurofly, you would be able to immediately start using any plane at all that you choose, that you would like to. But the basic principle is that you have to be qualified in order to use each of the airplanes. You have to have the right, the permission to actually use it. It works like that even in reality, where each pilot has to go through actual training for each type of airplane that they want to fly with. And that's exactly how it works here too. The whole training begins with you having to go through 9 stages of mandatory training that are predetermined. That means that you'll gradually become familiar with 9 different types of airplanes, but you will also learn the characteristics of different types of airports. During these 9 stages of basic training, you should learn everything that the Eurofly 3 program has to offer. And after going through each of these 9 mandatory stages of basic training, you will receive one airplane of that type that you have just been training for of your own. So when you're done with these 9 stages of the so-called basic training, you will have 9 different kinds available to use, and you'll be able to perform flights at your leisure with these 9 airplanes. And you will also be able to earn virtual money for performing these flights. But you will also be able to expand your training and qualifications and to become qualified for other airplanes beyond the 9 basic ones as you wish. But in order to get qualified for any airplane beyond the 9 basic ones, you will already need to pay for that qualification using the virtual money that you have earned performing flights with the airplanes that you are already qualified for. So how does it work? Let's take a look at the main menu. Well, the main menu is probably going to look a little bit more modest for you on your first launch, and that's because until you have gone through all the 9 stages of basic training, you are not going to be able to perform any other types of flights besides the training ones. I have a version running here for the purposes of this presentation that allows me to do all kinds of flights that are available in Eurofly 3. So after launch, the first menu item is training. I'm going to press enter.
Training dialog. Practice flights combo box 1 collapsed.
And I'm focusing the practice flights item. But I'm going to skip this item with Shift Tab for now, because what we are interested at the moment is this one.
Training combo box Mooney M20J Czech Republic Liberec LKLB collapsed.
Training, which is also going to be the only item that you are going to have available in this dialog on first launch. That's a list where you can see all the airplanes with which you can currently begin doing the basic training. Or later on, when you have already gone through some basic training, you also see here those airplanes with which you have already started training. When you've already gone through the basic training, you will be able to start doing training even for other types of airplanes, or you can even be in the process of training for several different planes at once. All of the airplanes that you are currently training on will appear here in this training list. For now, we're still only in basic training, so we can only see those planes here with which I've already started training. There's the airplane that I'm currently training with. But in your case, when you first launch the program and you first start doing the training, you will see the only airplane here, which will be Cessna C-152, and you will not be able to do anything else at this point in the training list, other than to confirm this plane with enter.
90.
Steering
Dashboard
controls
window.
ready.
Airport selection dialog. Select an airport combo box. All on islands Cumlinge, EFKG, collapsed.
And I'm in the phase where I'm asked to select my starting airport. In general, I can perform the training at any airport that I want, but the airports are offered in such a way that I can only choose the airports of the category which corresponds to the level or to the stage of training that I'm currently performing. Which means that at the beginning, when first launching Eurofly and when first starting to perform any training at all, you will only have those airports available to choose from, which are the easiest and smallest category 1, and which are the smallest and easiest and simplest airports. And only later on in the subsequent stages, the airport selection is going to expand for you, and you will have ever more complex and difficult and larger airports available to you. So that in the 9 mandatory stages of basic training, you are able to go through all the kinds of airports and all the categories of airplanes. Later on, when you're choosing voluntary, optional, further trainings to go through, you will naturally be able to select from the entire offering of airports. So at this point, we only have the limited and easiest and smallest selection of airports available. I could choose any one of them at this point.
Congo, Cook Islands map, Cook Islands my share.
And every time when I'm selecting an airport, I can press tab,
Filter edit blank,
to access the filter edit field. So I can narrow the selection down here.
Blank.
So for instance, let's type check in here so that I can only see those airports that are available.
Czech Republic Bohanavis, Czech Republic Bensov, LKB.
In the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic Brekla, Czech Republic Brumov.
So for instance, if I choose an airport in Prague, which is not only the capital of the Czech Republic, but also my home city,
Czech Republic Polika, LK, Czech Republic Prague /Letniny, LKLT.
And if I press enter now,
0.
Steering
Dashboard
controls
window.
ready.
I'm already going to appear in the airplane itself, and I can start the training. Training is performed with the so-called training airplanes, which means that even if I did destroy this particular plane in the process of training, training does account for crashes and collisions, so it's still okay in training, and it doesn't harm me in any way in my future career in Eurofly. If you already have, say, 10 airplanes of your own, and you're in the process of training for an 11th one, any possible crashes or failures are not going to do anything against your professional career. When I finish the training, the conditions are different for Category 1 and Category 2 and Category 3 planes. But in principle, it's always true that I need to perform 10 successful flights, including the landing, with each training airplane. With the smallest Category 1 airplanes, they don't necessarily have to be 10 consecutive successful flights, but for planes of Category 2 and 3, it has to be 10 consecutive successful flights in order. And I also need to have flown for a required mandatory distance for a certain number of kilometers, which is 1,000 kilometers for the small airplanes, 5,000 kilometers for the mid-sized ones and 10,000 kilometers for the large ones. And at that point, the training is finished. You will receive one airplane of that particular type for your own use. So in this case, it would be the Cessna C-152. And at the end of the training, the program is going to ask me where I want to have this particular airplane of my own located. This is a very important decision because later on after training, you will only be able to perform flights with the airplanes that you own only from these airports where you actually do have your own airplanes located. So it's probably useful for the 9 airplanes from the basic training to place them somewhere all over the world so that you have one of them here, one of them in a completely different location, so that you will then be able to fly with them anywhere you want strategically. If you put all of your airplanes that you've received after training to the same single airport, then you will only be able to start flights at this one particular airport. So this initial placement of the airplane is really important, and it's essentially the only time where you will be able to choose and decide for yourself where you want to have the newly acquired airplane placed. Later on, you will only be able to get it to a different location by actually flying it there. So these are the training flights in Eurofly 3 that we perform at the beginning. And when first starting out, building your career will really be just about performing these training flights. But there's also another kind of training flights available, and that's the practice flights, which are optional, which are no longer part of the mandatory training. I'll get back to the main menu. Training.
Eurofly 3 Lucas Hosnadal window.
I'll get back to the training menu.
Training dialog. Practice flights combo box 1 collapsed.
And I'm now on the practice flights menu item. That's the one that we skipped before. You won't be able to see this item in your program until you've finished at least the first stage of basic training. But at the moment when you finish the first stage of basic training successfully, you'll receive one airplane of that type, which is Cessna C-152, and that airplane will become part of your own fleet. But at the same time, you'll also gain the possibility to perform the so-called practice flights with this type of airplane. Practice flights are used to practice something that you may not yet be entirely certain about, or that you may still be afraid of, and that you do not dare doing with your own airplane. When doing free flights or any other type of flights, you earn money and points for performing that flight, but you can also lose points and money in case you have caused a crash or made a mistake during that flight. So if you're expecting a difficult flight to an unknown airport or something like that, and you would like to practice it first without having to worry about making a mistake and possibly losing money and points, that's exactly what practice flights are used for. So in this list of practice flights, we can see, in my case, that Cessna that I was talking about,
Cessna C-152.
We could press enter on it.
Airport selection dialog. Select an airport combo box.
Here we can also choose an airport, just like in basic training. And that's because this does really account for the possibility that you may still need to practice something. So I'm going to choose
Albania course, Alberta, Bangladesh, Belarus, Belize, Bhutan, Belize, Belmopan, Hector Silva, 200.
Steering controls ready.
And I could start flying with this airplane at this point. And again, just like in the case of basic training, even if I do destroy this plane or make a mistake of any kind, it's still not going to have any negative impact on my career whatsoever. I'm not going to lose any points or money, but I'm not going to earn anything either. So practice flights are really indeed meant just to practice, or relearn, or train, or try out anything that I may need to do. So the training and practice flights are the first two types of flights that we have introduced, but they're also the only types of flights in Eurofly 3 where we are not rated and ranked in any way, but we can't lose any points or money either, and this cannot impact our career in any way. I'm going to get back to the main menu again. Training.
Eurofly 3 Lucas Hosnadel window.
And I'm still going to get back to training for one last time.
Training dialog. Practice flights combo.
And this window, this dialog, has a third item, which I can't see here right now, however, because I haven't finished the basic training yet. But if we did, we would be able to see a third part of the window here, and that would contain the airplanes which are being offered to us for the further paid qualification. When you've gone through all the 9 stages of the basic training, which are mandatory, you would then be able to see all the other airplanes in this part of the window. There is over 100 of them, and you could get qualified for any of those, but you would then have to pay for it. So if you would like to choose any of the further qualification airplanes, you would just choose it and press enter on it, and it would get moved to the training list, to the first part of the window where we have previously seen the Cessna, and you could start the training for it in the same way as you have done all the previous trainings, meaning that you would have to perform 10 successful flights, and after finishing the training you would be asked at which airport you would like to have this airplane located. So these are the training and practice flights. Now let's take a look at free flights. Training,
Eurofly 3 Lucas Hosnadel.
charter flights, business flights, scheduled flights, free flights.
1. Free flight dialog. My plane's combo box 1 collapsed.
The first item we can see is My Airplanes. These are the planes that we have acquired through training. At the beginning, there's going to be 9 of them after going through the basic training, but later on, there can be more of them. In this list box, we can see not only our planes, but also where they are currently located.
Beechcraft 36 Bonanza, Prague/Letnany, LKLT. Cessna C-152, Brno/Turini, LKTB.
That means I can perform a free flight with this Cessna, meaning I can fly anywhere I want, but only starting at this location.
Cessna C-152, Brno/Turini, LKTB.
In Brno, Czech Republic. So there's no choice of airport here. If I press enter on it now,
0.
Steering
Dashboard
controls
window.
ready.
I'll automatically be placed in
Airport Brno/Turini.
at the Brno Turini airport, and I can perform this flight. Free flight.
Free flight.
But this free flights window gives me 2 more options. I'll press tab. After My Airplanes,
Filter edit blank.
there's again the filter field. If you already have a lot of airplanes, you can easily search for the one that you would like to fly with using this filter.
Company planes combo box 1.
There are company airplanes here. We'll talk about these in a while.
Filter edit blank. Rental offer combo box England badminton.
And then there's the rental offer. Renting an airplane does not mean another type of flight. We're still talking about free flights here, but this lets us perform a flight from anywhere we want to anywhere we want. For instance, I would like to perform a flight from Prague to London very much at this point, but I don't currently have any planes in Prague at the moment, and someone could say that it's a pity if I do want to start my flight in Prague at the moment. So yeah, I do have this option here, and that's what the rental offer is for. I can perform a free flight from Prague to London, and this option is exactly what I'm going to use for it. If I press the down arrow key here,
England Birmingham, EGBB, 0.
we can't see airplanes here,
England Bristol, England Cole Aston,
but rather airports. There's the filter here again, so I could type anything I wanted to narrow the search down. If I confirm this now, the program is going to tell me
plane rental dialog. You are about to rent an aircraft that's not part of your fleet for a free flight. Your account will be charged 0. Do you wish to continue? Anno button Alt plus A.
that I'm going to rent a plane that is not part of my fleet, and it's asking me if I wish to continue. And these rentals are paid, so I must have earned something already in order to be able to make use of this option. So the program is now asking me if I would like to continue. It's telling me that it's a paid service and that a certain amount is going to be deducted from my account. I could go back at this point, but if I press enter to confirm that I do want to do it.
Plane selection dialog. Select a plane combo box 1 collapsed.
I am now on the plane selection screen where it's asking me to select an airplane. So it's only now that I can choose the plane that I would like to fly with. And this selection of planes is limited by the possibilities of the airport that I just chose. That means I can have a very large fleet of airplanes, but if I chose, for instance, a very small airport, obviously I will not be offered all the airplanes that I have, but only those that can actually take off at this airport. So I'm going to choose
Airspeed is Beechcraft 30.
an airplane in this way.
200
Steering controls ready.
And we're located
UK, England.
in
Europe.
the UK, England.
Red Hill. North Somerset. Blank.
In Red Hill, North Somerset. And we could start performing the flight now. So as I've just demonstrated, it's possible to perform a free flight in two ways. Either using my real actual fleet of planes that I actually got qualified for and that I have received of my own, or using this rental offer. There doesn't seem to be any difference between them at first glance, because I can earn money and points in both ways. But the key difference is that if I rent a plane, obviously I will not be performing the flight with a plane of my own. In the case of the first option, if I did use an airplane of my own, then the plane, after I've finished the flight, would be placed at the airport where I've actually landed. So it's going to change its location from where it was before. Since I now chose to rent an airplane, I'm also going to perform a free flight with a different plane, not with one of my own. I could travel to the mentioned
Red Hill,
but if I now get back
to exit world free flights,
free flight,
then my
Beechcraft 36 Bonanza, Prague/Letnany.
My plane will still be placed in Prague, in Letnany, because my fleet has not moved. So at this point, we've introduced three basic types of flights, which are training flights, practice flights, and free flights. And we've also introduced three different kinds of airplanes. Training planes, which are not my own, with which I only train. My own planes, with which I can perform free flights and earn money. And company planes, which I have to rent in order to be able to perform a free flight with them first if they're placed at an airport where I don't currently have any of my own planes. And rented planes with which I just perform a single free flight and I'm done. But in this free flights window, we can also choose a fourth type of plane, and that is company planes. I'm going to press tab.
Filter at company planes combo box 1 collapsed.
And here I can see a list of the company planes. Company planes are interesting because they are shared in common among all the pilots of Eurofly. These are planes which are being used in real time. There's a certain selection of them. It's approximately 4 or 5 types at the beginning, where there's always multiple planes of each type, of each model. And these planes are also named specifically so that we are able to distinguish between them. Let's go through this list.
White Cessna C-172, Brno/Turini, LKTB, Pampalini after crash, pre-code says Stenu. Blue Cessna C-172, Bratislava, MR Stefanik, LZIB. Black Cessna C-172, Piztani, LZPP, test pet after crash. 2. Airbus A300 Roma, Ostrava/Misnov, Leos Janicek, LKMT, Pampalini after minor accident. Airbus A300 London, Marseille/Provence, LFML, Peter after crash.
So you can see that there's multiple Cessnas, but there's a white one and a black one. So there's multiple different colors of the same plane in this case. So if I like flying, for instance, with the Roma Airbus, I know where to find it and I can choose it to perform a flight with. And what's specific about these company airplanes is that since they're shared among all pilots and used in real time, that obviously means that only one pilot can be using the same airplane at any given time. If someone else took the white Cessna C-152 at this very moment and took off with it, then we wouldn't be seeing it in this list. But if they landed somewhere with it, we would also be able to see in this list where it currently is, where it last landed, and who it was that last used it. So let's take a look at the
Loose 1. White Cessna C-172, Brno/Turini, LKTB, Pampalini after crash.
And we can see that the white Cessna 172 was last used by the pilot Pampalini, that he's crashed with it.
White Cessna C-172, Brno/Turini, LKTB, Pampalini after crash.
And that it's currently located at the Brno airport of Turini. Let's now take a look at the Roma Airbus, for example.
Blue Black 2. Airbus A300 Roma, Ostrava/Misnov, Leos Janicek, LKMT, Pampalini after minor accident.
And if I was now to take this Roma Airbus and perform a flight with it, the others would then be able to see that I was the last one to pilot it, and they would also see whether I've crashed with it or not. Company flights are obviously rated and paid better, but there are also higher sanctions for crashing with company planes since, it's company property, so we need to be more careful about them. Let's get back into the main menu.
Free
Eurofly
flights.
3 Lucas Hosnadel window.
And let's also talk shortly about the other types of flights that are available. These include
Charter flights.
charter flights. Charter flights are what we may know from the past as task packages. So these are essentially whole, complete sets of flights where you may be doing, for example, a tour around Europe or a tour across Italy, depending on which set or which package you choose. These packages do contain multiple flights, also with different types of airplanes, and you do need to be qualified for these airplanes in order to be able to even start performing the package in the first place. At the beginning, before starting the package, you can take a look at whether it even includes the airplanes that you are qualified for or not. And based on that, you can decide whether you want to start performing it or not. If you find out that the package does include some airplanes which are not qualified for, you can either skip it for now, or you can pay to get that qualification for that particular airplane first, so that you will then be able to perform the package.
Business flights.
Business flights are flights where the program is going to randomly generate a route for you. For instance, it's going to tell you that you're supposed to fly from London to New York. It's going to tell you whether you're supposed to be boarding passengers or transporting some cargo, because a business flight can be either a cargo one or a transport one. And it's also going to specify a time limit for you, let's say 4 or 5 days, within which you will then be required to actually perform that flight. The challenge is about you first having to actually reach London or whatever the starting destination is with one of your own airplanes that you already have. So the condition is that there has to be at least one of your own airplanes at the starting airport before you can start performing the flight. So if you just received a task that starts in London and you do have one of your own airplanes there, you're okay and you can actually start performing that flight right away. If you have none of your own airplanes there, then in that case you have the 4 or 5 days or the week or however long it gave you to get one of your own airplanes to that starting airport first. And only then you can actually perform the business flight. Business flights are rated and ranked even higher than the other types of flights. And then we have
Scheduled flights.
scheduled flights here. Scheduled flights are essentially regularly scheduled services on a given route that every serious airline company has. You have the option to book a flight here.
Book flight.
This means that you will see the flight schedule and you will then be able to choose a flight from there. And in that flight schedule, you will be able to see, for instance, that there's a regular flight from London to New York every Sunday at 5 p.m. You will be able to book that flight, and that means that, for instance, on Sunday, the 10th of February at 5 p.m., that regular flight from London to New York will be performed by you. But again, in that case, the particular flight then has to be performed within the specified time. That means that you will actually have to be available on Sunday at 5 p.m. to actually perform the flight. All these three types of flights, meaning charter flights, business flights, and scheduled flights, are performed with service planes that we are borrowed from the company for this purpose. So again, they're not going to influence our own fleet in any way. And all these three types of flights are again ranked and rated higher than the ordinary free flights. The table of the point gains and financial earnings that we can get for a specific type of flight is part of the Eurofly 3 rules, which you can find on the website at eurofly.stafankiss.sk, or also directly in the program if you activate help mode from within the airplane. And I've shown you the help mode in the previous tutorial in part 5, which was covering the additional features of map exploration. And I'm also going to be talking about it a little bit more when we are actually controlling an airplane. But one more important thing that I still need to mention about these flights is that in the case of business and scheduled flights, these are flights that you have to book in advance. And in case you do book a scheduled or business flight, then it's obligatory. That means that if you do not perform the booked flight within the allotted time, you will be sanctioned both in your score and financially accordingly. So these are the types of flights and airplanes in terms of their properties and differences. And in the next part, we are finally going to take a seat in the cockpit of an airplane and we'll talk about its properties. So I'm looking forward to meeting you there.